the incumbents never start a movement. It's people who have to ask for change. And corporations and big money are in keeping the status quo. That's actually how we see our world. And it's people that have to look at, like, we can do this differently, and we can have an impact by sort of stepping out and saying, this is what we need, and we want you to make this change. So movements are started by people wanting the change, and then, policy and corporations, they follow.
Welcome to How We Change the World. I'm your host, Deborah Rowan, and today I'm excited to introduce an extraordinary guest, Jacquelyn Francis. She's the founder of the Global Warming Mitigation Project. And starting on July 12th, Jackie will embark on a remarkable 600-mile electric bike journey from her home in Aspen, Colorado to Sun Valley, Idaho. And this isn't just a bike ride. It's a bold statement and a powerful metaphor, actually, for our fight against climate change. Jacquelyn's ride aims to raise awareness and funds for Global Warming Mitigation Project, which supports this innovative, science-backed solution to the climate crisis. And with the intense summer heat that's going on, Jackie's determination to ride through temperatures as high as 103 degrees really demonstrates her commitment to showcasing the urgent need for climate action. And really, if you can help support her cause, please do by visiting gwmp.org or searching for Francis on climateride.org. That's FRINCIS. But let's rally behind Jackie and support her mission and take us all one step closer to a sustainable future. Join us in cheering her on and consider making a donation to fuel the change that we all need. Good morning, Jacquelyn, and welcome to How We Change the World.
Good morning, Deborah. Thank you for having me.
Do you go by Jackie or Jacquelyn or both?
Either one is fine.
Okay. You're like me with Deborah and Debbie. It's like, people want answers, darn it. Well, this is a very, very exciting month coming up for you. You have a huge challenge awaiting you that is a little bit daunting. It's very exciting, and it's for a very important cause. And I'm just going to leave that little teaser out there while I introduce you, and then we'll get into what you're about to take on. So first of all, you are a climate scientist. You live in Aspen, Colorado, which I'm sure people say you are lucky enough to live there, but you grew up there, right? You're born and raised?
I was raised here. My parents moved here when I was 6.
Oh, 6. Okay. So you must have also thought it was lucky to grow up there because you stayed there and kept it your home. And you're right up the road a piece from me, I guess we could say, about 3.5 hours. I'm going to be up there next week, in fact, but you will probably be gone. Anyway, you write a column for Aspen Daily News about climate issues, and which I'm a little curious what all you delve into and what people there are thinking about and how they respond. But your main focus is that you founded the Global Warming Mitigation Project, which absolutely has taken off. What year did you what year did you found that?
It was in the fall of 2017, so less than 7 years ago.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing because I've seen the numbers and we'll talk about that. But I think that I know that you did it so that you can support individuals who are working on decarbonization, help them scale up their science-based solutions to decarbonize the planet. And I just want to ask you, because I read somewhere that you wrote, and I think it might even be on your website, you said that science-backed solutions to climate crisis already exist. They just lack the funding and the qualified workforce necessary to, implement it and to be successful. Is that, I don't hear that very often. Is that actually a truism? Is that fact?
Absolutely. And there might be a few solutions that are, or not solutions, that problems in our world that are difficult to decarbonize. The aviation industry, the steel and the cement production, because they're so highly intense when it comes to the heat necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But we're there as far as the things we can create. Some of it is expensive, but it is doable.
Yeah.
And a lot of the solutions aren't that expensive. They just need to be, implemented in scale. I mean, we all know what's happening in the solar industry and the prices going down.
Right.
We can install solar all over the world in places where there's, energy deserts and energy poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And wind, offshore wind. I mean, these are things that work, and we know they work.
Mm-hmm. And so many of them. You named two, but I don't know if you read Paul Hawkins' book about all the solutions, but I mean, there are so many solutions to explore and put money into and study and implement is the biggest thing. So when you started this climate mitigation, were you thinking, why reinvent the wheel? Like, we've already got these people in place doing all this research and finding the answers. Why not just put the money to them? I mean, was your basic premise?
So I went back to school in about 2016 and got a master's degree in energy policy.
Oh, good for you.
Climate.
Yeah.
And as I was getting the degree, I was just studying like all the solutions that exist. And I was just like, why aren't we scaling these up so quickly? Because we can, and we have the technology, we have the intelligence, and we're talking about an industry, oil, gas, and coal, that's very energy dense, and switching off from that takes a lot of different sort of types of solutions and how we look at that. Mm-hmm. So it takes education, it takes changes in our economic systems, it takes changes in our social norms. And I said, we need to have more excitement and incentive to do this. And that's kind of where I came up with the idea to implement this prize aspect. Mm-hmm. And it actually has been working really well. People are getting more and more excited about the solutions and about the avenues to decarbonize.
We just don't hear that very much. I don't hear that hardly ever on a typical newscast, on a typical newspaper, any kind of mainstream media. All we hear is the doom, which is important too, because we have to know the stakes. But I just feel like, maybe you do write about that in your article or in your column.
I hope so. I think because I think about this all the time, and I think too about how, the incumbents never start a movement. It's people who have to ask for change.
Correct.
And corporations and big money are in keeping the status quo. Mm-hmm. That's actually how we see our world. Mm-hmm. And it's people that have to look at, like, we can do this differently, and we can have an impact by sort of stepping out and saying, this is what we need, and we want you to make this change. So movements are started by people wanting the change. Mm-hmm. And then, policy and corporations,
it follows.
They follow.
Yeah, they do follow us. And I think we forget that so often with not just this, but all the things that we're fighting for. They usually follow slowly, though. And businesses and corporations, they're the ones who really need the incentive to change. As I always ask anybody that I have on this show that talks about climate change, it's like, they have children too, they have grandchildren too, or maybe they want to, or, it's a mystery that has not yet been solved, why more people in the positions of power in gas and oil and everything to do with it still care more about money and profit than they do their own future, because it's quite obvious to everyone at this point what's happening. So if anyone can ever tell me the answer to why that is happening, I will give them a prize. All right. So talk about this prize though, because that will kind of lead us into our conversation about what you're going to be doing this month.
So the prize is based on greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. And the two main ones are CO2 and CH4, which is methane. So it's about reducing, removing, or replacing greenhouse gases. And I kind of modeled it off the Nobel Prize, which is categories in a broad spectrum of sort of solution sets. So it's carbon sinks, which can be both natural and engineered. And that includes things like, reforestation and mangrove restoration and things that are actually natural carbon sinks, as well as the engineered carbon sinks, which can be things like, reducing methane and using that for a product or, a gas substitute in aviation fuel, for example. And then another category is energy, and that's mostly about where there is energy poverty and where people want to have their lights on at night and need avenues to get that energy from sustainable and decarbonized sources. Social and cultural pathways, and that's an interesting category because it is about behavior change, education, podcasts like this, things that actually change the way we think about our world when it comes to decarbonization. Finance is a category, and that's a really important one because we talked a minute ago about how more money needs to flow into the spaces where decarbonization is possible. And then the last category is transport and mobility, and that talks about getting us, off fossil fuels in the transport mobility sector. So it can be everything from walkable cities to sustainable aviation.
So just to back up, so the name of this prize the name of the prize, I guess, the contest is what I should say, is the Keeling Curve.
Yes, the Keeling Curve Prize.
Okay. And can you explain what that's named after?
The Keeling Curve is the precise measurement of CO2 in our atmosphere. Okay. So it's been precisely measured since 1958 from an observatory in Mauna Loa, and now it's measured all around the world. And it actually is measuring how many molecules of CO2 are in our atmosphere.
I see.
So it's a very, I don't even want to say scientific, it's a mathematic. It's counting these molecules and seeing how they've increased over time.
Okay. So, but the Keeling Prize is a product of your nonprofit, of your NGO. And so is that kind of how you started it, with this prize, like based around this prize? So that's the whole focus of the organization, is rewarding people for their applying science to decarbonization.
That's the whole purpose. That way. No, it did start that way, and it's become quite recognized and a prestigious prize for people to win. However, we've actually spun off a internship program, which is our Constellations Internship Fellowship.
Yeah,
and that actually gets young people into climate careers. It's been really successful. It's a virtual internship, and we match young people with internships that are our prize winners and our finalists. So it helps with capacity building.
Wow.
It's really been special because people in these organizations need help, and these young people want climate careers. And we're getting thousands and thousands of young people that are trying to get these internships so that they can actually embark in their career pathways. And it can be everything from engineers to people who want to get into the fields of law, or whatever they're looking to do. They can find different types of jobs at these organizations, and we're seeing that as an incredibly successful program that we started during COVID in order to get young people into these virtual internships. And then we've also started a part of the organization, which is our conduit platform. And that actually takes the database of about 1,600 projects that have applied for the prize. And out of that 1,600, 60 so far have won the prize and won the financial piece of, winning this Keeling Curve Prize, which is $50,000 to 10 different winners. But there's obviously a lot more, 1,600 of these that have not won the prize. And so we're creating different avenues for more organizations to actually have access to funding. And we're doing that with working with venture capitalists, with family foundations, with other with people who are interested in the philanthropic space. And we've created sort of a Wikipedia of climate solutions on our website. And now we're figuring out ways how to create portfolios that have to do with offsetting your carbon. So it's really an exciting kind of new move in a direction of how do we activate more projects in our database to be able to accelerate their own growth.
Well, that is a lot. That's a lot of growth from 7 years. So where is all, because I've seen the numbers. I think it's 1.75 million that you've distributed so far. But the bigger, second to follow, the thing to follow that, which is even more impressive, is how they've parlayed that into over 2 billion. And I think I've heard you say possibly more.
Yeah, it's a little hard for us to track how much money that's actually turned into, because it is international, and a lot of organizations are, around the world. And, I do go on Crunchbase and see how the organizations, the for-profits, have grown, but we have both for-profits and nonprofits.
Okay. Yeah, sure. That makes sense.
So it's really exciting to see how much success we've seen in just accelerating the growth of these organizations and where they've gone, and how exciting it is to watch.
I bet.
Yeah.
They're like your kids out there changing the world. Wow, that's so where does all the funding come from? I'm thinking you're a climate scientist who starts this organization. Scientists are usually more about the science and not about the financial piece, but where are you raising this money? Is it because you live in Aspen?
It's actually not. We haven't really spread our wings in the Aspen market yet. So, we're going to, because there is a lot of funding here. But, I have a couple donors that have come in with, some serious funding. And then we have a handful of philanthropists. We've won a few grants. We have the Cisco Foundation grant was awarded to us this year. And that's a real stamp of approval for what we're doing. And I'm not much of a fundraiser, but what I've found is that being authentic and true to what I'm trying to do, and actually getting work done and being able to deploy these resources in really impressive ways is starting to gain a little bit of attention, where people are like, I do want my money to do something important that's creating real impacts. And being authentic to this work is kind of who I am, and how that's turning into something that more and more people are paying attention to.
Well, I had another question about the CO2 levels, but we just segued so perfectly into what you're doing this month that I don't want to interrupt that. So maybe you can remind me to come back and talk about where we are at with CO2 levels. But you just spoke to the authenticity of your work and people understanding that this is the real deal. This is like action on the ground. This money has visible, tangible results to things that matter to all of us. I think to all of us, to most of us, hopefully. So explain what you're going to be doing. I'll just set it up by just saying on July 12th, you're about to embark on this journey that embodies everything you just described. So tell us about it. And it also relates to your Keeling Prize category too. So tell us what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I got invited to announce our winners at a climate conference called the Sun Valley Forum in Ketchum, Idaho. And I thought, that's great. I want to totally do that. It's main stage right before the opening reception. And I thought, maybe I should try and get there a way that's like low carbon or as decarbonized as possible. So I looked into possibilities, and it turned out that I can ride my electric bike from where I live to Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and catch the train to Salt Lake City, Utah. And then I can ride the 300 miles from Salt Lake City, Utah to Ketchum, Idaho. And I looked at where I could stay on the route, how I could recharge my battery as I'm going along.
Literally.
Exactly. And I convinced my workout crazed husband to come with me and be my somewhat of a Sherpa where he drags the trailer along. So we're bringing our clothes. We're bringing a pump, some extra tires, the tools we need, some first aid equipment, and we're embarking on this crazy journey, which is not biking in, the wine country of Italy. It's actually biking through Utah and Idaho. And the thing I'm most nervous about is the 103-degree weather.
In what? And where is that predicted to be?
Salt Lake City is predicted next week to be 103 degrees. It's high. And, along the route, it's pretty much about the same temperature, which is apparently about 10 degrees hotter than the historical norms. That's
a lot, 10 degrees. Okay, just a little, I'm trying to figure out why you're going to Salt Lake City and up. Can't you go straight? Can't you cut across?
There is no train that gets any closer to Sun Valley, and so that's the route that is available.
I see. How many miles would it be to ride from Aspen straight up to Sun Valley? That's probably 1,000 miles or something.
Yeah, it's quite a bit longer.
Yeah. Well, okay, so you're doing this to, indicate to be a model for other people that these are the kinds of things that we can think about when we're thinking, because so many people don't, they're looking for the magic bullet, and they're looking for, and many people guide us to do that. I would say, we're not making that much of an impact with our actions. It really has to happen. This is what we're told, that it has to come from the oil and gas company. And the big industry. And part of that argument was because during COVID, when we were closed down for such a long period of time, that it didn't move the envelope that far. It didn't reverse things as much as we thought. So then a lot of people said, well, if my own personal contribution isn't that much, then why should I do things like ride a bike instead of drive my car? It's really not me doing it. So what's your thought about something like that? Do our actions count?
In my opinion, yes, our actions do count. The awareness that I hopefully raise from doing this kind of crazy thing is that we have to elevate the visibility of the change we want. And I want to see us invest in a better rail system in this country because, traveling by rail is a wonderful way to travel. And, I love riding a bike, and I'm going to turn 60 this summer, and I love riding my e-bike. It makes me feel like I'm 25 again. I can ride up mountains, and it's an amazing way to decarbonize your whole world. I bike to the grocery store. In the summertime, I can bike, 30 minutes into town and have meetings, and it makes me feel better mentally and physically, and, emotionally. So why not do all those things? Yeah. And it also sends a message that we want a world that has, less pollutants, less toxicity, and more engagement and more physical activity that makes us feel better about ourselves. Yeah. So to me, it all encompasses, how we can feel better as human beings, and we can also put pressure on these corporations to make our world a better place.
That's one of the best answers I've heard about why we should take individual action. I think you're 100% right. And it really is consistent with my own beliefs because, I just have noticed the smallest things, because sometimes people just want to say, what can they do in their own life, even if it's so minuscule and nobody sees it but I can tell you, I try not to use, and I really am pretty successful, just doing all the things around the house that one would, not using paper towels and napkins and using cloth and just, the small things and just not using the plastic and just little, all the things that we can do throughout the day. I mean, the most obvious is your grocery bags and things like that, but in your vehicles, people see it. Like, it takes a while, but it creates this cognitive dissonance in them. They're like, where's your paper towels? Like, people get so mad at me. I'm like, there's a rag. And they're like, what? And so, but then you think over time, I mean, it's such a small thing. I understand what I'm saying, but for people listening, those things build. I went to the Middle East with this and met this woman. It was probably in 2003. So people weren't as active in those days in terms of just straws and, plastic, just all the little things that we try not to use now. And I remember I had coffee with her when we got back, and she was like crazy. And she's like, are you going to recycle your, wherever we were? I thought, I don't know, like my packaging for my food, or are you going to use that straw? And she was annoying. And I still remember how annoying she was. And in a way, because it created a discomfort for me, because I knew I was not doing that. So that's the part that I kind of like, is I don't like making people uncomfortable normally, but in that kind of way, I will, because my actions matter. But yours are very, this is your whole life, but also I think this bike trip, it says so much about what you just said, that you're putting yourself honestly at risk. And that's not that people have to be at risk to live sustainable lives, but you're really making a point that you're walking the talk, and you're making it for all the people that are winning prizes from you. I mean, that gives them new incentive to say, well, look at the founder and executive director of the organization is also doing this. I mean, that means something.
Well, and believe me, Deborah, I'm a little bit annoying myself. I mean, and I say a little bit, but I'm definitely that person who's just like, I don't need this straw. And I'm that person that said, I forgot my little carry to go container. So, geez, hang on, I have to go get that.
Right.
I am constantly thinking about the things that I can do better.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily, it isn't judgmental. I'm definitely,
no, at
least I try not to be judgmental at all, but I do try to set the example almost all the time. Like, this is my water glass, and I mean,
it matches mine.
And it's because, like, why not use that as a water glass?
Right.
It's glass, and it's
plus it holds a lot.
It does hold a lot. So I think about that kind of stuff all the time. And, that's why, as I'm thinking about how to get to Sun Valley, I was like, okay, let me try and make a statement with this, and that's what this ride is all about.
Yeah. So a couple more things I want to talk about the ride. You mentioned that it's going to be 103, possibly. And you grew up, anybody who lives in Colorado, even at a mile high, which is where I live, we're used to cool weather. We have thicker blood, but you live at 8,500 feet or something around there?
It's like 8,000 feet. I live at 8,000 feet.
And, so you're not acclimated to that kind of a climate. And we were talking just a little bit about that before we came on, that this bike ride, I mean, this is intimidating. How are you going to ride in 103 degree temperatures? And what are your plans for that?
So I'm not a morning person, and I'm not a person who's kind of adjusted to these kinds of hot temperatures. So what we're probably going to have to do is get up at 3 a.m. and get started and try and get as much riding in before noon, and hopefully get to our next destination. And this is something that's actually very serious around the world right now, there are millions of people who work outdoors and who are going to have to deal with these kinds of intense heat or flooding or hurricane situations where they're going to have to figure out how to conduct their lives in ways that are completely difficult for them to deal with these kind of weather situations and events.
I just heard this morning that the Biden administration is proposing some kind of new help and training and a lot of things for outdoor workers. I mean, people see it's happening, for construction workers, for people picking produce, anybody working outside, but it's so many industries are going to be hit with this. So it's something that we have to own now and stop hiding from. But it's really interesting that your bike ride to me seems like such a metaphor for where we're headed. We're not prepared. You're not prepared. You're used to the mountains. You're going to be in this 103 temperature. And yeah, everything that you're doing on this trip is really an example of where we're headed and how we have to plan and wanting to make changes so that that doesn't have to be our future.
And it is a good metaphor, but we have to remember that we can't adapt our way out of this situation. And we actually can't use like human intervention to completely fix what we're trying to do. We have to turn off the problem, which is the fossil fuel spigot. We're taking energy from underground and putting it up into the atmosphere. And there really isn't any other solution to that than actually not taking it from underground, using the carbon in our world that's on top of the earth. There's plenty of carbon in our natural carbon systems and our natural carbon cycle for us to utilize for our energy systems and our fuel systems. And this is yes, super important. We can do some adaptation, and we need to now because we're so far down this road. We can do some human intervention, and we also need to do that now. But we also cannot take our eye off the ball of what we really need to do, which is decarbonize our energy systems and our transportation systems and our economic systems.
I wonder sometimes how many people don't get into the conversation or don't research the situation more because of this understanding of carbon and understanding of the science part of it, that it can be so daunting to people who are completely unaware. Like you use the word carbon sinks. A lot of people in the industry and who are so familiar with it, they use carbon sinks as though they're saying the kitchen sink, but still, but most people don't understand what a carbon sink is. And so I think unless you've done some kind, it's becoming more known, but that's just one example of the terminology that probably leaves about, huge percentage of people out of the conversation. And I just wonder if that is in some way that we can, make it more understandable for more people. But it is the science. I mean, that is the problem is the carbon, is the CO2 in the air. So, maybe a challenge for us all to take on a little more science understanding. But I do sometimes think that might be a problem. It's not so obvious.
I do try and talk a little bit about, I try and really meet people where they are and their understanding of this. And it is fairly simple science, and I try and get people to understand that it's not beyond their comprehension. We're actually taking products that are in the ground, that have been in the ground a long time. We're burning them. That's coal and oil and gas. And there's also agricultural systems too that are a part of this formula, the system. But we know exactly how it works. This isn't something that we're just like, oh, how do we figure out how this works? Right. We know how greenhouse gases work. And I actually learned about this. One of my heroes is my science teacher from 7th grade. And one day in science class in 7th grade, he was talking about these molecules that are called greenhouse gases. And the two that we have in our system is CO2 and methane for the most part, which is methane is also natural gas. And so this science teacher said that this creates a greenhouse effect, just like we have in, your typical greenhouse where you're growing plants, and it's going to warm the earth. And he said this is going to be a problem one day because these are going to accumulate. Really? And that's what we're seeing. And it's no more difficult than that.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And we know we're doing it. We know humans are doing it.
Yeah.
We know there's a natural carbon system that we're kind of tipping the scales of. And we actually know how to stop it too. So that's what this is kind of, my work is all about.
You did say something a few minutes ago that went past me, and I think it was, you mentioned that we're taking carbon out of the ground and in the form of coal and gas and oil, and other agriculture products. But I thought you said, when there are things on top of the ground that are also that we're also using. I thought you said something like that, like some other type of energy. And I don't know if you're talking about solar, or I'm not sure what you're referring to. We've
always, since millions of years ago and probably billions of years ago, had a natural carbon system where when things decompose, they turn into these gases, CO2 and methane. And it's something that's just been a part of our ecological system forever. I mean, we couldn't live on this earth without it because we wouldn't have the kind of life that we do. So that's kind of what I'm talking about when I talk about, you know, the carbon that's on top of the earth. We've always had this exchange between the, you know, carbon that's on our planet and what's in the atmosphere. And that's created, you know, a planet that's livable.
That works, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, upsetting that balance with the human systems of burning energy. I mean, the carbon we're putting into our atmosphere, it's not like it hasn't been a part of our system. It's that we're overcharging it. We're creating too much of a good thing. And that's going to warm our planet in a way that's potentially not livable for any of our plants, our animals, or human beings.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that I remember in 2023, they thought that the CO2 levels, the current, you know, we're possibly going to peak in 2023. Like we'd gone all the way up and we're just at the top and we're starting to come down as we reach for, you know, 2050 or whatever our goal is right now. Maybe you can tell me what our goal is to get our carbon, our CO2 levels down. However, it didn't happen in 2023. Is it going to happen in 24 that we are peaking the amount of CO2 we're putting out? Is it looking like it? Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. You know, I mean, I know that people talk about China being a problem, and China actually has put some money into a lot of coal mines, and coal is a big emitter of CO2. The United States is actually also emitting a lot of methane, which is CH4, and that's a problem as well because methane is a very potent heat-trapping gas, and it doesn't live as long in our system, about 20 years versus about, you know, 100 years versus, you know, different types of greenhouse gases. So we need to be aware that all of those are contributing to the rising temperatures. So we can measure the molecules. Do we know exactly how they're going to play out in this huge global system? No, that's a lot more difficult. You know, so we are seeing CO2 levels continue to go up, and that's a global problem. And we have to have some global cooperation, which obviously is difficult in these times with global wars and the geopolitics globally are very difficult right now. But Deborah, they're honestly going to get worse with climate disasters because it creates this you know, people shut down, and it creates this like nationalism and this like scarcity of resources. And it's something that we have to, as humans, look at very seriously, where we have to work together on this particular problem in order for it to not get worse and have it be an even more devastating problem.
Do climate scientists understand why the politics are so difficult? Obviously, people I understand there's things like, you know, China wants to burn coal because they want, it's the economy, obviously, in all these countries. But is that the full story? It's just so hard to understand.
It's actually not the full story because, you know, people are very emotional. And when there is things like resource scarcity, like water scarcity, or even devastation from, you know, a natural disaster like a hurricane, people do tend to react in ways that might not be as predictable as you might think they would be.
Yeah, fear does a lot of things to people.
Yeah, and I read something one time that was just like, as a scientist, I can understand how molecules behave, but I can't understand how human beings are going to behave.
Yeah, where's that science? That seems so imprecise compared to the other sciences. I was trying to find your title, but I don't see it quickly. But I know that you, as one of your, I guess, side things, because you have many things going on in your life, you're involved in many TED Talks, but I know that you're also with at the airport at the Aspen. What is it, Aspen Valley Airport? What's it called these days?
It's called the Pickens County Airport.
Pickens County. Yeah. So I'm sure that then you bring an environmental lens to what exactly is your position? Because you're representing more the community, aren't you, on the board?
It's a volunteer board position, and
Okay.
I'm chairman of the Airport Advisory Board.
Okay.
So it's a pretty big volunteer job.
I bet, because that's a very important airport and a crazy one to land in. But anyway.
It is, I've been told, the third busiest airport in the state. Around 80% of the operations are actually private planes. And it's a very controversial airport because of, very many things. It's very close to the town of Aspen. So it's impactful via the noise, the traffic it creates. Yeah. And it's
the carbon footprint of so many private planes that bring in one or two people. I mean, that has to be very controversial and difficult for you to watch, I would think, as a member of the committee. But
it does challenge my my climate mentality in some ways. But I have to tell you that last week I brought in somebody to talk to our airport manager and other people in the airport process that I'm working on, who is CEO of an electric airline company.
That was my next question. Okay, I'm so excited to hear this. Go ahead.
and they're making electric airplanes as well as hybrid airplanes. And he explained to us sort of the technology, the timeline of that. And this coming week, I'm bringing in somebody else who's in the sustainable aviation fuel industry. And we're talking about...
Sounds like an oxymoron.
Well, it's not, because they can actually make aviation fuel out of things like municipal waste and woody biomass. And you probably know that there's a lot of beetle-killed pine trees in the area. Like Colorado is decimated by these beetle-killed trees, and they're complete fuel for a wildfire. So there's a lot of need to use these for something. And Colorado also has a pretty big agricultural industry, and there's a lot of waste materials in agriculture, like manure, and that is something that can also be used in sustainable aviation fuel. It doesn't have to be like corn that's taken away from your food stock. It can be municipal waste. It can be, agricultural waste, and it can be the beetle-killed trees. That can all be used as a fuel source. And
that's
again, it's the carbon that's on top of the planet.
Got it.
Not already thousands of years of buried pressurized carbon.
Right, to bring it all up at once. Well, that is, I don't hear much about electric airplanes, and I keep thinking that has to be coming, but it's almost as if you read my mind. So is that a real thing? Is that a burgeoning industry that we're just not seeing yet? Are there electric planes yet anywhere?
They're flying. This one company said that they've actually done quite a few pilot flights.
Okay.
There are some physics problems with electric aviation because batteries are still so heavy, and you need to have a certain type of lift in order to create something that flies through the sky.
Sure.
So the hybrid technology is actually something that will probably be much sooner to come. Through the FAA's approval process. And there are different numbers of passengers that you can put on the approved aviation planes right now. So it's not as soon as you'd probably like that we'll have the availability of electric aviation. And the planes will probably be smaller, but they can fly a long distance. Because once you get up in the air and are flying through the air, it doesn't take quite as much power as the takeoff and landing. So these hybrid technologies are actually quite interesting.
Well, I'm just thinking you don't brake though, right? And that's where hybrids get a lot of their energy is when you put on the brake. So it has to use something different. So that's pretty interesting. I'm sure there's a lot of challenges. Well, listen, when I want to make sure that we let people know exactly how to support you in your bike ride. And one thing I wanted to ask you before we get into the awareness and the finances and and donating, which I really think that people would like to do, is if you ride at night, is that a safe thing for you to do? I want to get back to that. Like if you get up at 3 a.m, I guess you've got to have headlights on your helmets. Not to go back to that part of it, but I just wanted to ask that question. Is that okay? Is that going to work?
I mean, I have a bike light on the front of my bike, and then I'm going to get a bike light on the back of my lights, or my bike.
But, yeah.
So hopefully it will be. I mean, I don't know.
You don't have yeah. So this is all new for you. This is all experimental.
I mean, it's probably safer than me biking at 103-degree temperature in the middle of the day.
That's a good point.
I definitely think that that's a little bit dangerous, and you know, time will tell.
Well, I know you mentioned before we got on that you don't have anyone following you. That would, there's no kind of van that's going to come pick you up, because this is to illustrate the purpose of riding a bike and not having a car follow you. That would kind of undermine the entire purpose. But so there's going to be some days that there's just literally nowhere to take refuge. So I just hope that you'll be very careful and plan ahead, and that someone can rescue you if need be. We don't want you getting hurt out there, but really appreciate so much that you're taking this challenge on as sort of a representation of what we can all be incorporating in some way into our own life. At least we can ride down the street to the grocery store on our bikes, without challenges. But sometimes you have to exaggerate a point to make a point, and that's a little bit what we're doing. What you're doing here. I say we. Well, we are going to be with you though in spirit. And so how do those of us in the listening audience, how do we support you, and how do we follow along with you? Because that's half the fun, right? I'm hoping you're going to be posting to Instagram or something.
Absolutely. It's going to hopefully it'll be really fun.
Yeah. Well, tell us the truth of whether it is or isn't.
I'm sure I will.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll be saying the word hot a lot, because it's going to be pretty hot.
Yeah.
But wow. So you can follow us. My website is gwmp.org, and you can follow us through the website or on Facebook or LinkedIn, which is where we'll be posting updates and everything like that. And then we're doing a fundraiser through something called Climate Ride. And if you go on climateride.org, you can just put in my name, Jacquelyn Francis, Jackie Francis, Jay Francis, any of those work. And it'll come up our donation page. And that's how you can, support us and follow along.
So let me get clearer on that. So I'll put this not only in the show notes, but up on the screen, because we're going to be so this podcast will come out, I think you're leaving on the 12th. I think this comes out on the 10th. So, it'll be right there for people to watch. And so I'll have that going across the bottom. So for those people, some people will be listening to this on a podcast and not watching it. So I just want to make sure that people can hear it here. So it's climateride.org. And then search for, like you said, Jacquelyn J. Maybe we should just give them one choice.
Well, Francis, if they just go to Francis, my last name, it comes up too.
Which is Francis.
Francis.
I think you're the only one. Okay. But also, if they go to GWMP, which is a .org, is there a link there as well, or no?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe Lindsay has that. I'll make sure she does.
That would be good, because that way people can go to your website and see all the work that you're doing also, and then read about that. Because I was realizing earlier too that we might not have made it clear enough that what the money is going for. So you're trying to raise $20,000 and
to support our organization.
Just in general, okay. Yes. And the organization, and then in turn donates money to all these different people that are working on climate change solutions. So, gwmp.org, or go to climateride.org and search for Francis, Francis. And then follow. So you also mentioned both Instagram and LinkedIn, and is it GWMP on there as well?
I believe it's on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Okay.
I should ask Lindsay.
I think it might be. Only found Instagram. So for we don't have those answers right now. I'll make sure again to put them up on the screen and then also in the show notes. But you'll find her one way or the other. And then, because I think following along and seeing the pictures and hearing about the heat and the not heat and the night travels, it makes it very real, and people can kind of look into their future a little bit with climate change and see what it's going to take to survive. The adjustments we're going to have to make, and maybe that will incentivize us to live more responsibly and donate to causes like yours that really do help find solutions. So I'm so inspired by you and excited for you, and thank you for what you're doing. I truly mean that. I don't hear it very often, the kind of work you're doing. In fact, very rarely.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I'm super happy to be an inspiration to you and to anyone who wants to think about this and care about this, because this is something that we really need more of.
We do. Well, best of luck to you. I know you'll be killing it, and your husband, thank him for going along with you. What a trooper. I'm glad you're not doing it all alone. And so we'll follow and we'll be in touch, and best of luck.
Okay. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you. Take care.